Hey guys, this is Kyle, and I'm excited to share with you another episode of The Gathering Stories. Today I am here with Mr. Mark Solomon, and say hey, Mark.
I'm happy to be here. I'm also known as Trudy's husband.
Yeah.
Affectionately.
Oh man, yeah. You might see Mark coming around and walking the hallways and just making sure everything is on the up and up.
Yeah. I do a couple of things around the church. I mean, we have a safety team that we've been a part of. I've been a part of for a couple of years now, and so you'll see me in the hallways, opening doors, and I'm a deacon here. And then obviously I'm Trudy's husband. Right. And so that's the most important.
I was about to say, you can't state that one enough, can you?
Yeah, no. It actually gets me discounts in certain places.
Oh, man.
Yeah, not here, but other
No, we
places.
charge extra there.
Yeah, right.
But, well, Mark, I'm glad you're here today, man. Glad to be able to sit down with you and hear your testimony, because you were just saying before we actually started recording that you've done your testimony at men's breakfast and everything and set the standard with PowerPoint. Of course, we won't have that opportunity today, but just being able to hear it, because I've never heard it, so yeah. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to sit down with you. But before we jump in, let's pray, and then we'll start at the top.
Awesome.
All right, here we go. God, we just thank you for today. God, we thank you for the opportunity again to just be able to sit down and hear Mark's testimony. And God, I pray that it's a huge encouragement to anybody who listens, whether they're in the gathering, outside of the gathering, or anybody that he shares this with or anything. God, I just pray that it's an encouragement, God, and it shows Mark's faith and how you've worked in his life and brought him to the point that he is now. And God, I'm excited that we get to share it. So I pray that you would take away all distraction today, and I pray that Mark can share from the heart and everything that you've done, how you brought him to where he is, and God, just where he's at now spiritually. And so thank you. Be with us, and it's all in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share. I do have an interesting story, from my childhood and how I grew up, and how obviously I came to Christ, and it's a journey, and I would never say that I've arrived.
Right.
I'm constantly refining myself and trying to, understand where God wants me, in different phases of life. I mean, you and I are similar in a way, in the fact that you're on the same plan that I was on for kids. And so, I've got 3 kids, and they're 20, about turned 21. Wesley, and then Caroline is 19, and Aubrey's about to turn 18. So a very similar pathway. Yes. So you're in for a fun time. I can say that much. But so,
did Trudy ever tell you that you had to give her proper credit? It's not 3 under 3; it's 3 under 2.5.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there was a time, and you're going to see, you'll know, you're 5-6 years in diapers. I mean, it's out of control, but you don't know any different,
right?
Because you're already there.
Yep.
And so it was fun. I wouldn't change it for the world. But growing up, when you look at my life in general, when I go back to, I'm a product of I'm a military kid.
Yeah.
And so when you ask any military kid, where are you from? Expect to get a long answer, right? And so the answer is, well, I was born here. I went to school here, went to high school here, went to college here. It's a list. And so, my story is no different. My dad was in the Army, and he, for the majority of my childhood, he may have had a job or two early on, but he went in to, was drafted for Vietnam, spent 4 years in, got out, went back in, and then spent another 20 plus years.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I grew up in that environment, and born and raised, I was born in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Okay. And that's where my family's from. And that's where, the majority of my family live today. And so when we moved to Germany, we went there. I was a kindergartner and lived there till the 6th grade. And then what happened was, unfortunately, with a lot of military families, there's a lot that goes on, meaning that you're away from your family. At this point, we were overseas, and my folks got divorced. And so I was 12, 13 years old, and we were in Germany because of my father. He was the reason why we were there. We went to a private school, which is a DoD school. Okay. Private in the fact that it's for military kids, but if you're not part of the military, it's going to cost you money to go to it.
Gotcha. So
when they got divorced, my dad was getting deployed back to the States. And we didn't have a choice. It wasn't really like, hey, where do you want to go? It was
signed.
You got to go.
Signed
You got to go with
yeah.
your dad because he truly is your sponsor. And we can't afford to just stay. My mom stayed in Europe, and then we, came back to the States. So, that was a challenging time.
Yeah.
Not only the fact that your folks are getting divorced, but now I'm miles away.
Right.
I mean, half a world away, from my mom. And my dad was a typical military guy. I grew up with not a lot of sympathy and empathy, and just it's who he was, right? I love my father. He's done a great job, and he's a fantastic man, and I never would say anything negative about him. And I'm not. I mean, that's just the truth,
right?
That's who we were. That's who he was, and in that element of my life, from having a mother who nurtures, it's just gone,
right?
And so, there's a lot that we went through. We went back to Oklahoma, and we were, I was 12, 13. It's just me and my brother. So I have a brother who's 3 years older than me. We both went back. And it was interesting because my dad was in his 30s. And so he had an opportunity. He was like, hey, I'm going out. I'm trying to figure out life. We were not churched at all. We weren't believers. And so my brother and I stayed home on Friday and Saturday night, opportunity to do whatever we wanted. Mm. What we did was watch wrestling and then fought each other. And so we didn't do anything stupid, which was amazing because we had plenty of opportunity to go do stuff. Right. We just hung out together. We played cards. We did some stuff. And we got close because we never really were. We're 3 years apart. It's kind of a tough age.
Yeah.
Especially when you're younger. So he and I just really bonded, during that time. And my mom, her folks were about 4 hours away. So we were in Oklahoma in Fort Sill, and we're from Fort Smith in Arkansas. Okay. It's on the border of Oklahoma. And so they were about 3.5, 4 hours away. And so believers, strong Christians, they started coming to visit my brother and I, just investing in us, and for us, it was that, that love and nurturing love we didn't have,
right.
And they were pouring into us. They were hanging out with us. They were teaching us card games and singing songs, and they were just a good example, godly love, right? We'd never seen that to that level. Right. And it was incredible. And so we looked forward to that. It was probably, they would come once a month, as often as they could. Yeah. They would come in and stay the weekend with us. And so probably a year, if not, a little bit less than that. My grandfather's in his early 60s. He passes away. Mm. And just, I think he had heart issues and he was gone.
Was that on mom's side or dad's side?
That's my mom's side.
Okay.
My mom's side. So my dad, his family, his mom died when he was young.
Oh, okay.
His father took him to his parents' house basically and dropped him off. And so, so it's him and his sister. I believe his sister went to his father's house and he went to his mom's house. And he just dropped him off, said, I can't deal with him. And he became an alcoholic. He was that way until he died. And so my dad didn't have a lot of examples of fatherhood. Yeah. But he did fantastic. Yeah. So my dad did a really good job. Not, what happened to my parents was between them, obviously, but, it impacts the family. In our case, it really impacted us because we were half a world away. Yeah. So when my grandfather passed away, we came back, went to his funeral. My mom came back for that. That was her father. Mm. And so now I'm experiencing, a death, of my grandfather, first one I'd ever experienced. And then I'm experiencing this, my mom's back. Right. And all the emotions that go along with that. And it was challenging. It was tough. It's a 13-year-old boy. It's confusing. Yeah. And you're like, I'm growing up fast. Yeah. Because I'm dealing with adult emotions that I don't know how to deal with. Right. And so that was challenging. And of course, my mom stayed for about a week or two. And then she took us back to Oklahoma, dropped us off at school. And I remember I walked in to a class and I had a test that I missed. They gave me a test to go to the library and do the test. And I went to the library and I sat there. I filled my name out, put my head on the desk, and just cried. Mm. It was overwhelming. Yeah. And it was tough. And so as a kid, you're like, I don't know what's going on. This is a lot. So let me tell you, this is where God's plan comes in.
Yeah.
Because this is what's amazing. At the time, it was, wow, what a coincidence, right? And then now you look back and you're like, oh, that's God's plan.
Right.
But so my dad was at work, and he was talking to a guy that we were getting ready to get moved to White Sands, New Mexico. And my dad was a short-term, medium-range missile dude. And so White Sands was a good place to go fire stuff. And so he randomly talking to this guy I worked with. And the guy said, you know what? We've got I'm getting deployed, or I'm not deployed, but I'm getting stationed in this little town, and it's called Fort Chaffee. It's a national, or I'm sorry, it's why am I drawing a blank? I just drew a blank. Sorry. It is National Guard. That's it. That's it.
Okay.
All right. I'm back. I'm back, baby.
Back in the pocket.
I'm back in. So it was a National Guard, and they needed a high enlisted soldier to run the National Guard, or be that person in charge.
Oh, wow.
And my dad was talking to this guy, and he goes, hey, listen, that's where I'm from. It's real close to Fort Smith. I mean, maybe we can switch assignments. And so they went and talked to their commanding officer, and he said, I don't care, which I'll do, right? And so, which was good, and they switched. And so then we moved to Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Wow.
So I'm like 14 years old, somewhere around there. And my grandmother's in a house, 3-bedroom house, by herself, and just, she was married for years, and she's just really devastated. So she goes to my dad and says, let me take the boys. Let me take them in.
Wow.
You go, in a nutshell, go get your life straight.
Yeah.
Because he had a lot going on. So in between that time frame, my dad met a woman, and they got married and then annulled, and we moved into a house with another family that had a kid that was a 19-year-old boy doing drugs. I mean, it was a lot, going on during that time frame. So
there was a lot of influence.
Oh, totally.
Like away from church and
oh man,
God and,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm totally away from it, right? And the opportunity to go do whatever we wanted to do, which we never did, which was amazing to me. Like we had this opportunity. We were hurting as kids. Why wouldn't we?
Right.
But I don't know. We just kept, God kept us away from it, which was amazing. And so now here we are. Fast forward a year and a half later, we're back in Fort Smith, which we, my dad grew up there, and we were born there, and we have all our family there.
Yeah.
And my grandmother needs something because what we bring to the table is chaos, which is 2 teenage boys buzzing in the house. Yep. Now she's got stuff to do, and she's got purpose. I'm not saying that she didn't, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, she was lonely.
She's got some busy work.
Exactly. Yeah. And so she loved it. We loved it.
Yeah.
Because now we have this incredible woman. Yep. It's nurturing, and so we're living with my grandmother. My dad's getting his life together, living on base, and my grandmother basically came to us and said, all right, this is how it works around here. I go to church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and you boys are going with me.
Yep.
And we were like, okay, I guess, what do we got to lose, right? Sure. We'll do that. And that's where, I got connected. It was interesting because here I am back in Fort Smith, and I grew up in ways where, I was always reinventing. Like, you move so much that,
right.
And most of the time you meet people that are like-minded because we all move around because we're military kids, and it's, you adapt pretty quickly. But moving to Fort Smith, they don't know me, so they're like, who is this guy?
Yep.
And so, we joked beforehand, and, that Trudy had mentioned to you that I was a break dancer.
Yeah.
And so,
So your former life.
My former life. I've got tons of former lives. So I did reinvent myself everywhere. And so I was a shiny new object in this little town.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what's this? Let's go figure this guy out. And so it was interesting, but I met friends really quickly, and, it was good, and I really enjoyed it. But, as part of my testimony, I'm going to church now, and we had this revival. A guy named Paul Stanley shows up. He is his claim to fame, other than what he was doing. He was Elvis' stepbrother.
Oh, wow.
And so that was like the cool thing, right? So that's what brings you in the door. It's like, tell us stuff about Elvis. And so he was tough, man. He was like old school, I mean, I'm going to bring the heat. Everyone's going to walk down this aisle before I leave. I mean, that's the way we're going to do this. Like you get up and walk to the bathroom, he'd meet you halfway and say, where are you going? Oh, I got to the bathroom. He's like, you might miss something, son. Sit back down. And so he was tough. It was good though, right? It was that old school, type of revival. And so we're going through this. Is a week-long deal, and it's basically around the youth. And so I've met some good guys in the youth group. And so, during the calling, the first night, I could feel it.
Yeah.
I knew I didn't want to do it. That initial step is too much. I didn't know what it meant. How's it going to impact me? I mean, all of the questions that you have, like, what am I don't know, I don't want to do this or not. And so I remember the second night, one of my buddies named Reed, he put his arm around me. So I'll try not to.
It's all good, man.
This part always gets me choked up because he looked over at me and he said, I'll walk with you.
Oh, man.
And so little did he know, that's all I needed.
Yeah.
And
How long had you known him?
he was older than me. And so it was probably maybe 6 to 8 months.
Wow.
I mean, he just knew, and he knew I was struggling. He knew our family was really messed up. Yeah. And he, man, it was powerful.
Wow.
And we talk about this all the time about reaching out to people, inviting people to do stuff.
Right.
And this was such a great example of, I just needed someone to put their arm around me.
Yeah.
Encourage me.
Yep.
And it changed my life. I mean, from that moment, everything changed for my family.
Yeah.
I mean, my brother gave his life. My dad gave his life. My mom remarried a Jewish man, and they ended up giving their life to Christ.
Wow.
And so everything, my family went from broken, just disarray, and completely messed up, to something beautiful. And but obviously God's plan and God's timing. But man, I tell you, to this day, I can't really talk about it. I mean, it was just that impactful that when I look back at my life today with my wife, my kids, and where we're headed, it's all based on, God's plan.
Yeah.
And I had to go through some stuff, to get there. Now, all that said, it wasn't, rainbows and unicorns after that, right? It was really tough, but I had to, change my lifestyle. I went to my folks and I said, I need to get out of the public school system. I want to go to a private school, Christian school. Yeah. And so I moved into a Christian school because I knew what I needed to, I knew, I completely changed. I mean, it was miraculous how I represented myself and looked, and all that stuff just was almost immediate for me. Yeah. It was just like, God's got a plan for me, this ain't it. Yeah. And so, man, yeah, it was cool. I look back, and of course, we moved back to Germany. Yeah. And then my life continues, and it's, you got your typical challenges of life, that happens, but I tell you, man, it was impactful. Now, fast forward, to where I am today. Of course, there's a lot that happened between those time frames, right? But I mean, it's encouraging for me. Well, at least I feel somewhat compelled when I see kids that are in that age that are going through stuff. Yeah, because I want to go to them and say, hey, look, there's a better life ahead of you. Yeah. You just got to give in. And that's the challenge, right? Even in today's world, right? Even, absolutely. No one wants to give in to that and say, well, I submit. And so, that was a turning point, for me. And so yeah, I mean, that's how I gave my life. Now, where I ended up, years later, I ended up going back to Germany, finished my high school there, went to college in California. My mom ended up moving to California about the time my dad was moving back to Germany. And so she had asked, hey, do you want to come live in California? And finished her high school there.
Yeah.
And my brother just finished high school. He was like, yeah, I'm going. And, I didn't, my father was incredible. And the things that he did for us, and it wasn't anything against my mom. There was a lot there. I mean, first of all, I was in 6 different schools within 3 years.
Wow.
I needed some stability. We were going back to a place that I kind of grew up in. So I was looking forward to that. And my mom moved to California. Then I said, wherever you are, my stepfather was in the Air Force. And I said, wherever you are, I'll go to college.
Yeah.
And they happened to still be in California. And so that's why I went to college in California. Otherwise, I don't think I ever would have gone there. But
right.
But it was fun. I enjoyed California as a tourist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think I could live there. But yeah. So I mean, when Trudy and I met, so I will tell you that because I came from a broken family, marriage was always something I always wanted.
Yeah.
Like I always wanted to be married. I mean, that was like a big thing. Like I just felt truly compelled. Like this is what I want out of life. Just be married.
Yeah.
Solid. And so I met a girl in California, and I was in my early 20s. And of course, I was a Christian and she wasn't. I felt like anyone else, like I'll change her.
Yeah.
Flirt
to convert.
Yeah, I can do this. Yeah. Yeah. She'll come around. She's a good person. I mean, she'll come around. And so we got married. And so it was a nightmare, And so, and I'm not saying it in a bad way, but in the fact that when things got rough, we didn't have foundation.
Yeah.
And we were married for 2 years. It wasn't like we were in our early 20s. There's a lot that was wrong with that situation, but most of it is the fact that we were young and stupid, and I wasn't listening to God.
Right.
Because I mean, it was clear that this should not happen.
Yeah.
But I was so, consumed with marriage and wanting to do it right.
Yeah.
Because I saw what it looked like when it was wrong.
Yep.
And so,
now, did y'all go to church together or anything? Or
no. Well, here's the deal. This is where it's funny. Not funny, but none of this is funny. But you know what I mean. I mean, it was like when things went south. First thing I did was I'm like, we got to get in church.
Yeah.
Like I know this is going bad, and I know what's going to fix this. We got to get in church.
Yeah.
So she agreed. She's like, all right, well, whatever. And there's a marriage seminar over a weekend. So let's go. And so we went. We came out of that, and she's like, and I was like, that's cool, right? I mean, I'm all excited because I mean, I'm feeling,
How providential was that it was a marriage conference that weekend?
I know, right. And we came out, and she goes, yeah, this ain't me.
Wow.
She's like, I don't want anything to do with this. I'm like, what? And she's like, this is not for me. And so, that was it.
Yeah.
And so we had to, there's a line in the sand, and I'm like, well, it's really for me. And that's my problem.
Yeah.
Is that I'm void of that. And I'm trying to be something I'm not.
Yeah.
And I've got to, and that was it. And so, now of course, other things happened too. She had an affair. I didn't say that much, but she did. And that's the reason why we were going through, trying to go to church and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, when that happened, here I am in my early 20s, and I'm divorced. I mean, what a icebreaker that is, right?
Yeah.
So what are you up to? What are you doing? Well, I'm divorced. It's
right.
like, really? I just finished college. And so, it was a really, it was tough. And so,
yeah. Did that affect your relationship with God?
Oh, totally. Yeah. So what I ended up doing was, so I moved into an apartment, and I lived minimalist. I mean, I had a mattress and a box springs on the floor. I had a futon in the living room. TV, I refused to buy cable because I was cheap. And I had a rabbit antennas up, and I think I got PBS and CW or something It was horrible. There's nothing to watch. And so, And in my fridge, I had ketchup, mustard, and cookie dough that I would just bite off
Staples.
of. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just threw teeth mark in it. I mean, I just wasn't cooking it. I was just eating it. And so when I met Trudy, the story is kind of interesting. So we're both working at Cisco Systems in Raleigh in RTP.
Okay.
And I've been there for about a year and a half. And then she was in a training class. And I was talking to my boss. I was getting moved into a different role. And my boss was like, hey, we need to have someone come in and basically you need to backfill. We have somebody to basically take over your role. We got to figure that out. There's a new training class just came in. So we'll figure it out. And the training class walked by and Trudy walked by. And I said, how about her? I mean, what do you say we get her to do my backfill? And he's like, all right, we'll make that happen. Because I knew that I'd spent a lot of time with her.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be creepy, right? She didn't know it. It was creepy, but she didn't know that. But yeah, I mean, it was like
all coming together.
Yeah, that's right.
All part of the plan.
That's right. Is this God's plan or is this Mark's plan? And so it was awesome. And so you got a chance to talk, and we were spending a lot of time on the phone because we weren't even close to each other in the building from the get-go. And so I remember what I call our first date, in which she calls her. I mean, we had a date. I mean, It was a true date. But there was we had a company picnic we were going to, and I asked her, I said, hey, you going to this picnic? And she goes, yeah, I think I'm going to go. And I'm like, cool, I'll meet you there. Right? To me, it's a commitment.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's totally not, though. And she's like, that's not you asking me out, which I totally didn't. But in my mind, I'm like, well, I'll be there. And you said you were going to be there. And so, and I'm from a military family. My dad, every time we went somewhere, it was like we were invading a country. You know, if the invasion starts at 6, we're there at 0500.
Yep.
So I'm used to getting early. If you know Trudy, she's not.
Right.
She's late, like all the time. And so we're, I go to this thing. I mean, literally, it starts at noon. I'm there at 11:30. Right.
Oh,
I walk in. They're like, it's out. In some fields. Up in some pastures or whatever. It was kind of hard to find. We didn't have GPS back then. You had to follow balloons. And so, by the time I got there, they're like, "Why are you here so early?" And food's not even here yet. And I'm just like, just hanging around. And so, I was there for about an hour and a half, and she didn't show up. She wasn't there. I'm like, man, I'm out of here. I'm not. As I'm walking out, she's walking in, and I'm like, oh hey, and she's like, hey, you leaving? I said, no, I'm not leaving. And so we hung out for a while, and then we both, said we had work to do. And we both went back to the office, and we just chatted. We didn't do any work, but we pretended like we were. We just sit there and talked forever. And so then we eventually, started, dating, and it was interesting because the way we started our dating was, it was filled full of rules and regulations. It was hilarious because I look back on it now and I laugh because it was like, all right, let me tell you what I won't accept.
Yep.
Let me tell you and then she's like, great, let me tell you what I won't accept. And so we had these lists of things like, this is what I will do, what I won't do. Yeah. And number one, we're not going to live together ever. Right. There's some things that I knew that God wouldn't bless. Right. And I just really wanted to make sure that I didn't screw this up. Yeah. And I never did this before. I started out this way. Right. And so, cause you just jump into it and figure it out later, and you figure out you shouldn't be here. Yeah. And so anyway, it was kind of comical. We laugh about it now because it was just a complete, just kind of a crazy, like, really, this is not dating at this point. We're just, managing each other. And so,
it's a formal business relationship.
It was, yeah. Please sign here.
Right.
Yeah. Right. You will not break this covenant. Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting, but we laugh about it. It was kind of funny at the time. We were both serious about it. And, so we were dating for, I don't know, probably about a year, maybe. And, I'm sure we'll have to go back and edit this for the time frame because Trudy will correct me. So, but I got an opportunity to get promoted, and it was a big deal. So I've been trying to get done, and now I got to move to Texas. And so I got an opportunity to do this. It's mine if I want it. Yeah. I came to Trudy and I'm like, hey, I got this opportunity. And for me, I love moving. Yeah. I love change. It's in my DNA.
Grew up doing it. Yeah.
It's a new adventure. I'm excited about it. Yeah. And she grew up in Mount Olive, went to Carolina, right. Never left the state. She's like, well, she never lived outside the state. And so she's like, and we weren't married,
Yeah.
and so I'm like, what do you think? She goes, Mark, you should take this job. You've been working hard for it. It's something you should do. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I'm a black and white guy, and I'm like, I guess we're done, because I don't know how this is going to work.
Right.
And she goes, listen, if it's in God's plan, it'll work. Let's just wait, but you should definitely follow through on this, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So, okay. And so,
So with that being said, though, because that was the first time you said that you've mentioned that Trudy said anything about God. So
yeah.
This isn't her testimony podcast.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
So had she grown up?
Yeah.
In it, and
she did.
and that's that was the foundation.
Yeah,
of y'all's relationship.
it was. Yeah. So she grew up Methodist, and she had a good foundation there already, and so she and I mirrored each other from a conversation of like how we wanted our life to be God centered and Christ centered, and our marriage to start off that way. And so, probably the only battle I think I ever won with her is we went to a Baptist church.
Yeah.
And so that was about it. But yes, we had the same foundation, and we were both there. So we had this discussion, and then here's where, the God's plan comes in for our marriage. I'm basically getting ready to move. I've gone down there and looked at apartments and all that stuff. And it's Houston where I was moving to. She calls me up. She goes, hey, guess what? I just got an opportunity to get promoted, and it's in Houston. I said, are you kidding me? And she's like, no. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So when I lived in Raleigh, I was in North Raleigh. She was pretty much in Chapel Hill. Yeah. So we met in the middle in RTP, and we would see each other at work, but it was tough. I mean, 45-minute drive was a lot. Yeah. And so now we both moved to Houston, lived in an apartment complex. I lived on the bottom floor. She lived on the floor above me. Wow. Like literally one up, one over. That's where she was. So now we're together, we're eating dinner, we're going out, she's got a dog, we're doing it all, which is really, really cool. And so that's when probably the best thing we ever did. And for young married couples, I always say, sometimes it's best to move away, because being able to rely on your spouse as your only provider and not calling home and going, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but it is a different ball game.
Absolutely.
So
you really have to do the leave and cleave.
You do. Yeah. I mean, otherwise, you battle, and it's, and so, it was good for us. For me, I loved it, right? I was like, I'm cool with this. I like this. And then we went to, I remember one of the first weeks we were there, I was like, I'll take her to the mall. Like, she'll love it. It's underground. I mean, Houston's hot, and so there's a lot of stuff they do underground. Wow. And so it's mall, it's kind of underground mall. And so we go, and I'm like, I need a belt anyway. And so we were looking at belts, look over, and she's bawling.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, what's going on? She's like, I just realized I know no one. Like, I know I've never been in this situation where I don't know anyone. Man. I just want to go back to my apartment. And I'm like, oh boy, this is a disaster.
So that's when you broke out the cardboard and started breaking.
Yeah, I said, look at this. Look at this. Do the old, look at the shiny object. Right. There he is. And so it was eye-opening for me because I'd never been around people like that. Yeah. I'd always been around different people that moved around. And so, and that's who she was. Yeah. And so, and that came out, funny story. Let me back up a little bit. I'm gonna get sidetracked, but we, as we continued dating, we joined a church, so a Second Baptist in Houston, and we joined a young married couples class. And so we weren't married, right? But we joined that because we wanted to surround ourselves with those type of people. Yeah, because we were trying to get to that level, and we really wanted to learn, from people. And so,
at that rate, how long had y'all been together?
I think we dated for about 2 years, 2.5 years, maybe at 2.5, and then we got married. And so at that point, we'd been together for a little over a year or so. Okay. So we got engaged, maybe 6 months ish after we moved to Houston. Okay. And so we knew, it was just, we knew that was going to happen. And, but we joined this young married couples class, and we had this event at our house. So fast forward, we get married, and then we moved into a townhouse together. So we had bought a townhouse that wasn't being constructed. They got done early, which is kind of,
Wow.
Yeah, it never happens. But this guy was really good. He's like, I'll have it done 2 months earlier, and we're like, we're not getting married until, later. So we're like, we're not, you move in.
Right.
She says, you move in. She said, no, you move in. I don't want to move in without you. And so, we were talking to some of our friends that we had met in this class, and they're like, why don't y'all just go get married?
Yeah.
And we were like, can we do that? Because we were doing a destination wedding in St. John.
Oh,
and
wow.
so, so anyway, we did. We went down to the courthouse and got married, made it official. And then we still had our ceremony in like a month or two later, but we moved into our house together.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to make sure that we were doing everything, right.
Yeah.
So we had this event at our house, and this is where Trudy's, small town, comes into play. We were, if you've ever seen them, Trudy doesn't do anything halfway. It's always done like, it's done up. You go to VBS. I mean, you don't have to go far, right? And so she's like, we need tables, we need tablecloths, we need centerpieces. I mean, she's going through this. I'm like, we got like 20 people here. They can sit on the floor. She's like, no. And so she goes, I dropped off the tablecloths at the dry cleaner. We'll pick it up on Saturday. It's great. So we go by there Saturday. It's closed. They close on the weekend. She's like, okay, all right. We just got to find out who owns this and call them up and have them meet us here. I said, what are you talking about? This is the 4th largest city in the U.S. I mean, you're not going to find this guy. And she's like, well, that's what we do back in Mount Olive. I just call somebody up and we just go get it done. I'm like, I don't think it works here. So, she's she's just that, level person, which I love.
Driven.
I love it. Well, I love the fact that she's driven, and I love the fact that she's just a small town girl.
Yeah.
And so as we, eventually got married and, we're moving down this path, we got my claim to fame. If you remember Enron was well, that was my only customer. So when they imploded, I had my job changed, obviously. So I had to move to Dallas to cover AT&T at the time. And so we moved to Dallas. And that's where we had our 3 kids, got connected to a fantastic church, had some really good Christian couples we were doing life with, having babies with. And we loved it. I mean, we wouldn't have moved. We would not have left. What brought us back was we went to Texas on a 3-year plan. We were 8 years in. And so 3 kids later. And so Trudy's like, hey, I really want to get back to North Carolina.
Yeah. Got
a twin sister. We've got, she's got kids, and our kids aren't going to know their kids. And, her family's here. My dad and my stepmom moved back to Raleigh. And so we had family here.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, let's, the theory was they're going to go to school here. Our kids are going to start school, meet Texas people, get married, and never leave.
Yeah.
We're like, well, we're stuck in Texas, and not a bad thing. But,
right.
Anyway, we came back, and idea was we had a small little beach house here, and we were like 1,100 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath. So the 5 of us are living there. Kids are small, but still. And, and I'm trying to work out of there. It was chaotic.
Yes.
And so we went to Raleigh probably a half a dozen, if not a dozen times, looking for houses. Could not find anything we wanted. And we just didn't feel like that's where God wanted us. So Trudy came with this idea. She's like, hey, what if we just stayed here? Because you've been doing this for 6 months now, and no one seems to care.
Right.
You're traveling. You're going to have to travel more, but why does it matter? I'm like, well, I guess we're right. This is 15 years ago. Right. This is before remote working was cool. And so that's where kind of interesting. That's where I met Larry Rice. And so he came over. We interviewed a bunch of people, and we chose Larry, and Larry actually built our house. Man. And so raised our kids here. Our last one just graduated high school, and they're all grown up here. And in a small town, which we love.
Yeah.
So God had this incredible plan for us. Unfortunately, when I look back at my life, I mean, obviously I had to go through some things that God, I don't think it was his plan. He ultimately got a plan, but there's a lot of decisions I made that were really just bad.
Right.
And not trusting and not having faith. And I think that obviously impacted, me, but it built me. Yeah. It's who I am today. And so I look at my life and think of what I could change, and I don't think I changed anything.
Right.
Of course I made mistakes, but that's part of it.
Yeah.
So you just don't want major mistakes, but
God uses all of it, man.
He does. I mean, my testimony now, when I think about it, I mean, it's multifaceted.
Yeah.
It's interesting as you move through life, and, of course, now my focus is, how do I, really be that spiritual leader?
Yeah.
And as the kids were growing up, you're always trying to make sure that you're the spiritual leader of the home and you're driving that. And I'm married to a person who is very driven.
Yeah.
And, she's not going to stay idle.
Right.
Which is what attracted me to her. And so I've had incredible help, from her. I mean, I couldn't be successful in my job today without her and what she did at home. And so she took on way more than I could have ever done. So, I think that, God blessed me, and I wanted an incredible marriage. He gave me that.
Yeah.
I wanted kids. He gave me kids. He's got this incredible plan. I'm excited to see what I've got, left. I mean, what's the next phase, right? There's got to be more to it. And so.
Absolutely.
It's been good.
Man, that's exciting. That's an awesome story. You took us around the world.
I did. I literally took you around the world.
It's cool how God uses every piece, though, right? Because I actually used this quote in the last episode that we did, which was the first one. But talking with Hans, talking about how God uses crooked sticks to make straight lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
And it's just cool to see how even when things seem so broken, like God uses it. Yeah. And draws us closer to Him.
That's true. We can get hung up in our past. Yeah. And we can hold on to that. And I'm not good enough. I'm never going to be able to get into heaven because of the things that I am, or just the horrible person that I am. And the truth is that, I mean, we're all broken. Yeah. And I can't, there are testimonies where, like, I grew up in a Christian home and went to church every day. Yep. And I'm a Christian. Yep. And I look at that and I go, it's great. Everyone's got their own story and nothing wrong with that. But, I can't, it's hard for me to talk about when I accepted Christ. Yeah. And not because it's upsetting, because it's so powerful. Yeah. Like, it just really changed my world. Yeah. And that's what's amazing. And so, but yeah, I mean, God can use all of us, in His own way. But you can sit and think about the mistakes I've made in my life, and I don't belong, I don't belong around Christ. Right. But, He's given me that. He's died for my sins and He's washed it all away, and I couldn't ask for anything better. Right. That's what's amazing. Yeah. Is even for me, right? I mean, for everyone, but you think about yourself and you're like, why am I worth it? Right. But
because deep down we all know how screwed up we are.
Totally. So. Totally. Yeah, it's having that faith that I think is important. Absolutely. And when I think about, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole.
It's okay.
All right.
Chase it.
Yeah. But when I think about faith, I mean, I think about, like, what it means to truly have faith. Yeah. And you think about, like, when you're a kid, you hear the story of Noah. Yeah. And you're like, oh, it's a boat. It's floods and there's animals and stuff like that. It's a great kid story. But you think about, during that time frame, his faith was so incredible, where he was being ridiculed. Yep. He was still preaching. Yep. He was building a boat. He was called crazy. Yeah. I mean, he did some amazing things. And when we talk about being a spiritual leader, he got on that boat. His wife got on that boat. His 3 kids got on that boat. Their wives got on that boat. Yep. And they did that because his faith was so strong and so convincing that he was their leader. Yeah. I mean, they were like, why would he do this if he didn't truly believe? Right. And, that's having faith. Right. And so I think it takes a lot of that. Sometimes we forget, who we are, and we're His. Yep. And we got to be able to believe and have faith that, this isn't it. I mean, that's encouraging to me. Yeah. That we have the ability to accept Him and know, having that faith of knowing that one day we'll be in His presence. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine. Right. When I accepted Christ, the feeling I got, I can't imagine feeling that every day, like more intense.
Yeah.
You know, like I can't even.
For real, though.
It's almost like a bright light for me. Like I can't even look at it.
Yeah.
And it's nothing compared. You know, which I think is amazing. And so, you know, hopefully, you know, I pray that we all experience something like that in our life at one point. We get a little glimpse of heaven.
Right.
It's a little glimpse of it. You know, I'm not saying that that's what it is, but I tell you what, it can't be far off from what I felt.
Right. And nothing. Yeah. You'll know when you experience it too. Cause like my mind went to Moses on Mount Carmel, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he saw the backside of God and is like, it affected him.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
So you'll never see anything the same way again.
Exactly. Well, and that's part of it, right? Is that I think once I accepted Christ, then I had a different set of lenses on.
Yeah.
And that's why it changed dramatically.
Yep.
Gotta get out of the school. I gotta start over. I gotta be around Christian people because I know that I'm horrible.
Yeah.
And I know that if I'm not, I'm gonna fall quick.
Yep.
And so, you know, it goes back to what we always say, you know, you need to surround yourself with people that are like-minded, which is a little plug for the gathering.
Yep. Walking together.
Yeah, that's right.
And the next podcast that we're going to record. So.
Perfect.
But anyway, man, thank you for sharing today. I do have one question though.
Yeah.
Do you have like a life verse? Was there anything that's really stuck with you from when you were young and first
I do
accepting Christ and to now?
I do, and I apologize, but I'm a horrible student, and so I'm gonna make sure that give it justice. But it's great because we're in Hebrews as a church.
Yeah.
And Hebrews 11:1 has always been my life verse, and it's on my desk at home. But now faith is. I'm going to make sure I give it its justice, and I don't have my glasses on. But now faith is confidence in what we hope for and the assurance about what we do not see, which is what we kind of just talked about, you know, is having the ability. I'm a data guy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if Trudy says we need something, I'm going to research it.
Yeah.
You know, like I've bought cars, I've researched, you know, whatever. She goes, hey, Aubrey needs a laptop for college. Well, I'm going to research all this and figure out what the best thing to do is. Because I need to know. I need to know all the data.
Yeah.
There's some things I just don't have data for. Like we don't get a sneak peek of heaven.
Right.
It says, hey, this is what it's going to be like. Okay, cool. Now I know.
Yeah.
It's you got to have faith and confidence, you know, just like Noah did.
Right.
And so I think everyone, you know, will battle with that at some point in their life. If anyone tells you they never, you know, question, that's crazy, right? We're humans and we're going to, because we believe in information.
Right.
Like I need to know, give me the facts.
Yeah.
You know, so,
right.
You know, being able to check myself sometimes and making sure that I'm, you know, having that confidence that I need to like, hey, I know this is real and don't let the world tell me differently.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, thank you for showing up and
I appreciate
recording with me today.
No, hey, listen, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.
It was really cool. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in and listening to another episode of The Gathering Stories. It's been a pleasure to be able to record with Mark today, and I'm excited to be able to share his story with you, and looking forward to the next ones. So if you want to know anything more about Gathering Stories, you can visit the website at gatheringsurfcity.com/podcasts. If you want to see that's where you can see all the ones that we produce and all the ones that we put out. There's a couple other podcasts in there. But if you want to send us a question, or if you have any questions for Mark, you can send them to me at podcasts@gatheringsurfcity.com. And I can get them to Mark, or if you see him walking around the hallways, I'm sure he'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have for him too. If you would like to record your testimony, reach out to me at podcasts@gatheringsurfcity.com as well. And we'll maybe be able to line something up. But thank you guys for tuning in. Excited for the next one, and we will talk to you later. Bye.